Hey guys, welcome to the Syndicate, the show where we get the world's best angels, VCs, and today crypto investors on the program. Today we've got Gabriele Jarrosson on the program. He is someone whose name is very hard to pronounce, but has an incredible track record. So I'm pretty excited to have him on. Thanks for coming today, Gabriel.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So take a second. How did you get here? What's your story?
Yeah, well, let me try to sum it up for you. So I'm French. I'm from Paris, born and raised. I'm an engineer. I studied engineering, but that really never wasn't for me at all. And since I was a kid, actually passionate with entrepreneurship. Sold my very first website when I was 13 years old. Went to engineering school because that was what I was supposed to do, apparently, and didn't like that at all. I was really not interested with my studies. So I started a company while I was in school. Fast forward, after I graduated, created a bunch of other companies, failed some of them. But the main one I started after I graduated was a wine selling website, which is totally cliche for a French guy, I know. And it was basically a marketplace, the Amazon of wine selling, directly shipped from the producer to the consumer. That did not exist in France at the time. Long story short, I grew this company for 4 years, sold it to my competitor, made a little cash, and decided to become an investor. And that was probably a weird move, but I was so passionate about entrepreneurship and I could not possibly create every startup out there, so I decided to invest in them. So that started in 2013, so that brings us 5 years back from today. And of course, along the way, I picked up crypto as well because it's such a promising technology and a lot of profit to be made for the investors, but it's really a game changer, I think.
I think so as well. Crypto and wine, I like it. Why'd you sell the business?
Honestly, I didn't really like the business at all. I started this not because I was particularly a wine guy. I just saw an opportunity. But along the way, I realized, but it was a little too late, I realized that the wine business was a pretty terrible one. First of all, wine is really heavy, so it's expensive to ship. And also, it's fragile, so it breaks. And even with special protection, professional transporters and stuff like that, it still breaks. So that's the second thing. And lastly, the margin in this business, I realize, is more on the producer side. The guy that actually makes and markets the wine makes much more money than the distributor. But I realized that a little too late once I was already a few years deep into the business. And I thought to myself that there's so much more that I can do, more interesting stuff. That's actually maybe one of the theses of my angel investments, is that not all businesses are created equal. And I realized that along the way, and I was kind of devastated to realize too late that I was in the wrong kind of business. So I thought to myself, how can I get out? So the business was actually growing, which is a good place to sell from. But it's kind of counterintuitive, but I really actually wanted to get out and to go into different kinds of businesses that didn't have all those problems that I just mentioned.
Yeah, it's interesting. Same deal. Like you look at a restaurant or something, it's that, God, I would never want to start a restaurant business. There's just so many businesses that are not technologically advanced enough to be scalable. So then you decide, okay, I want to start investing. What's that process look like? So you've made some money. How do you make your first investment?
Yeah, that's actually also very linked to my story. I was 23 years old at the time. I was like, okay, I got a little money on the side and I want to invest it. And how should I do it? And I went to, first of all, my school had an angel investment club, my old engineering school. So I went there, and I mean, it's so funny the reaction of people at that time. They were like, "Really, you, the small, tiny student guy, you want to invest in startups? Like, are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's something that's really interesting." So I was like, "Okay." So I knocked there, went there, and after that, since the club was really small, the deal flow was small, I went to actually the biggest Parisian angel investor club called Paris Business Angels, so Paris angel investors, or Paris Business Angels. And they had actually quite a lot of deal flow there. Then again, I was once again the youngest member by far. Like the average age of a member was probably 60 years old, so everyone was looking at me funny. But yeah, that allowed me to make my first two investments, I think.
Okay, so then you're with all these old and gray guys who've done it. They know what they're doing, and you're learning from them. How did that process go? Did you try to find a mentor, or what was your strategy?
That's actually a really funny story too, and I love that you asked me that question, because that's kind of where I wanted to go with that story. Is I was actually really kind of disappointed in those groups, in those clubs, and actually at that time angel investment in France was way smaller than it is now. Now we've had Emmanuel Macron, and we've had all the startups ecosystem build up, but a few years back actually I think it was quite different. And everything I was doing at that time was kind of intuitive. It was not like right now. It's much more clear what I'm doing, my investment thesis. At that time, I didn't know much. I was just thinking, okay, I've got money. I like startups. I think I understand a little bit about startups. I'm going to try to invest. So yeah, at the very beginning, I kind of was sitting quietly in a spot of the room and just listening, opening my eyes, my ears. What are these guys doing? They've been doing this for a while. What are their investment thesis and everything? And actually, I was really surprised because I didn't see anyone that I wanted to replicate, to emulate. I didn't see lead investors and I was thinking, wow, this guy is a genius. I want to invest like him. And to the opposite, I was seeing some investments being made, some startups. And I was thinking to myself, man, why are they investing there? What am I missing? And, I was just thinking, okay, I'm super young. I don't get it. Probably they're professional and they know what they're doing and they got to have a reason. So I was asking them, what's the reason? And their explanation was really never satisfying to me. I was like, really? That's what you're investing? So long story short, I think, and I hope those guys are not listening to me right now, but that's fine. We're in another language. So if they're 60-year-old, they don't even speak English. But I was really actually disappointed. I thought they were pretty lame at investing. And that was kind of a shock to me. I was like, damn, this is the biggest angel investment group. And actually those guys, I don't know if you know that, it disappeared since then. But at that time, we had a very big tax on big money in France, the fortune tax. And by investing in startups, you were able to deduct the investment from your fortune tax. So actually those guys were not really interested in making a profit, in investing in the right startup. They were just interested in paying less taxes. And they would invest anywhere. So that led me to leave the group. And actually, the very funny story is my very first investment. The startup came and presented in front of the investors. And actually, in the whole room, no one wanted to invest. I was the only one. That was my very first investment. So at the end of the presentation, the startup got out of the room. And as they do every time, the leader turned around and said, okay, is anyone interested? And the room was like quiet. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, damn, I'm interested. That looks really cool. But I looked around and it was dead quiet. So, I was 23. I was shaking. I raised my hand like this. I was like, well, I'm interested. Everyone looked at me like, dude, are you crazy? Long story short, I ended up investing anyway. And I actually tripled my money in 3 years.
Nice.
I made an exit. And I cannot tell you the satisfaction when I wrote an email to those guys, just because, they need to know what happens to the investments made through the group, through the club. So I wrote back 3 years later, like, oh, I thought you would know, you would like to know I actually made a positive exit with that investment.
So with that, what were your check sizes like initially? I don't know how much you sold the business for.
Yeah, they were really small. Actually, I was barely able to join the angel investment group. The minimum to join the group was to invest 10 grand per startup per person. So that's 10,000 euros. Usually they're raising somewhere between 100 and 500,000 euros on the round. But since it's a group with, I don't know, tens or hundreds of people, it adds up. So that's the initial investment I made in my first investment there, and that represented quite a big percentage of what I had earned, because I didn't sell the business for a lot of money. So it was significant for me to invest that much. Yeah.
And then it sounds like you wanted to upgrade your network a little bit. How did you go about doing that, and how did you get more serious into investing?
So yeah, that's the next step for me. Was not easy, because all those things online, especially, and everywhere, you have to be actually what's the sophisticated investor. There's a trademark that actually you do have, I think, in your own syndicate. That says if you want to join, you have to have at least $1 million of net worth or $200,000 of income, and that was both things that I didn't have. So I was really I didn't know where to go. Lucky for me, so I ended up leaving the group, and I actually at that time was when we started seeing things online that didn't exist before. So I think 5-10 years ago, my story wouldn't be possible, because outside of the angel investment group, there was nothing. But then I started seeing online platforms and where you could invest. The crowd equity websites. There is a big one in the UK, that's Seedrs, that you probably know about. And we have actually a lot of them in France. France has a lot of capital and a lot of potential investors. So those websites allowed me to find an alternative source of deal flow. And I actually started working on having my own deal flow. So I started putting on LinkedIn that I'm an investor in startups. And as the French market is pretty small and there are not that many angel investors, I was actually really like entrepreneurs were able to find me online. So I started getting, just on LinkedIn alone, I don't know, at least one entrepreneur per week at the beginning, just reaching out and sending me his pitch and raising money. And yeah, I started developing my own network. So this plus the online platforms, plus then I started doing anything I can, partnerships with people raising money, just putting my name out there. And it's been an ongoing process of the past few years, just to try to build my own network of potential startups.
Are you investing full-time now?
Not yet. I wish actually I could. I'm just so passionate with entrepreneurship. I actually started another company 2 years ago. It's going really well. It has nothing. It's the right kind of business. It has all the advantages and everything, but it's actually mostly automated. So it's not even half of my time that I used on that business, and the rest is on investing.
What do you do?
I actually created an e-learning platform for big corporations in France to help their managers grow on the management skills, innovation, leadership, HR, stuff like that.
Okay, interesting. And then when does blockchain enter the picture?
So that's blockchain. Oh my God. So
was that a hackaround you found you could get to invest in without having to be an accredited investor? You found a good way to get in on a great opportunity?
It is, absolutely. I've been having on the back of my head for a few months now, and I'm going to reveal this to you. If anyone is listening and wants to do this, I'm happy. But otherwise, I'm pretty sure I'll end up doing it as soon as the French regulation is ready. But my dream is to be able to invest in startups only in crypto, but to have, instead of having tokens, to actually have shares, like to mix everything, to just make one ecosystem. I'm going to tell you why in a minute. So, but yeah, my investment thesis grew over time and started to look at something like I was trying to formalize what actually is my investment thesis. And of course, I was looking at tech projects, tech startups, scalability that you mentioned earlier. That is, of course, so important. And then, yeah, I started reading about blockchain, and of course, as a curious guy, it piqued my interest, and I read about it. And yeah, at some point, I think there's a point in someone's life where there's a switch in your brain, and you realize, wow, this really has huge potential, and can be something absolutely gigantic and change the world. So almost everyone had that epiphany in 2017 when blockchain became mainstream. But I'd like to think for you and for me, it happened before that. And yeah, when I realized that, I was sold, and yeah, I started looking at blockchain projects that I could invest in. Yeah.
I will say for me, it actually did not happen before that. I learned about it late and then dove in very quickly to learn as much as I could. So you find blockchain. It looks like you've had a couple of pretty solid investments, Storj among others. How did you get into great deals, and how did you build that network?
So actually, luckily enough for me, Storj was actually available through, once again, an online platform. So it was not a French one, it's one from Hong Kong, a crypto investment platform called Bank to the Future that I really recommend for crypto investors. So that's also something that I really went on doing is, as I mentioned, I really wanted to find the best deals. I had money to invest. I was really looking for great deals, but I could not join the mainstream big bucks investors thing. So one of the things I did is I actually, as I mentioned, really took the time to try to grow my network and to try to find those platforms. So I'm actually registered on tens and tens of platforms that do in many different countries that have those deals. And some platforms require, again, to be sophisticated investors, but the ones that do not, I'm on there and I'm looking at everything. So yeah, Storj was actually through one of those platforms. I also was lucky enough to invest in BitStamp, which is the leading European crypto exchange. So it was kind of a late investment, so the valuation was pretty high, but still, I think it was a great investment. Future will tell. And of course, what you mentioned, investing in crypto directly in ICOs allows me to find huge projects without having to be an accredited investor. It's not always the case. For instance, very recently we had the Telegram ICO that you probably heard about because it made a lot of noise, and that was not open to the public yet. They already raised almost 2 billion only to sophisticated investors. So that's, there's still some way to go. But for instance, it's really simple. But Ethereum, I was able to get in so low compared to where it is right now, and that was open to anyone. Just because, yeah, if you got into Ethereum before 2017, then you probably made a lot of money. So that was, something interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
How long did you hold Ethereum? You still have it?
I still have it. I'm something also that I think I have, and maybe an advantage over people that are only interested in crypto is when you're an angel investor, you're used to holding for a very long time, because usually with startups, you don't even have a choice. So the way most people envision crypto investment is buy and sell 6 months later. And I've met so many people that bought Bitcoin, that bought Ethereum, and maybe they doubled their money, which is awesome. I mean, if you just transform $1,000 into $2,000, congratulations. And then they're so happy and they sell. And I mean, as long as you don't sell, you don't make a profit, obviously. But I personally think that Ethereum and Bitcoin, just to mention them and others, in the long run, in 10 years, are going to be so much more valuable that I think there's no sense for me to sell. So actually, I don't think I ever sold any crypto, ever. I've just been buying for the past 3 years.
I would say you need to balance it too. So think about it like secondary shares. So for traditional angels, I have a blog post I put out recently, why liquidity is a bad thing. And it's kind of breaking through what you were talking about is, if angels, VCs, and people involved can get out of the project very quickly and easily, then there's not a lot of motivation to ride it out.
I agree.
And you don't have long enough time frame to actually hit innovation milestones. But I would say take money off the table. The more or less what I've heard is from other people that I would respect, not in crypto, but just in general, take enough money off the table so that you 2 or 3 times your investment, just in case the rest of it goes to shit. Because assuming you bought in pretty early, which it sounds like you did, you're at what, 20x, 100x right now at this point, yeah. Something ridiculous. Take enough to double or triple whatever your money was, which is going to be a tiny percentage of your investment. And then if you do that every couple of months, you still haven't taken very much out, but you've actually gotten a pretty solid return and still have the majority vesting, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's something that's been going through my mind. And yeah, the multiples are insane. But the thing is, as I mentioned, it's, well, first of all, it's a question of risk tolerance. I'm actually very risk tolerant, and I think you need to be a good investor. And that's how I made money so early. And that's one thing. The second thing is I've been thinking of taking, maybe 10% of my total investments in crypto, and just even with 10% of taking 10%, I mean, some of my investments, I think I'm at 100x. So if I take 10%, I'm still 10x, and I still have 90% in the investment. But the thing is, for me, since I'm really risk tolerant, I'm happy to lose 100%. But as I mentioned, like for instance, I'm a big believer that Bitcoin will hit $1 million in 10 to 20 years. So if I just take 10% right now, if I just have one Bitcoin and I take 0.1 Bitcoin out, for me, I think it will be worth at some point $100,000. So I mean, just to take a few $1,000 in profit right now, for me, is not worth it, because I think I deeply believe that it's going to be worth $1 million. So that's my own strategy. I'm accepting really high risk because I want really high reward. And I also, as I'm an entrepreneur on the side, I actually have also money coming in all the time. So I don't need to take money out of my investments. I would rather have them make a bigger profit. I mean, it's just my personal strategy. To go back on what you said about liquidity, I really 100% agree with you. I think liquidity is what really makes everyone bad investors. And I don't know if I've mentioned this to you, but I have a YouTube channel on investment. It's fairly recent, new. I started this 6 months ago. It's in French. I talk about investment in general, and I talk about 4 investment kinds that I like to invest in. Startups, mostly because this is my bread and butter and I love it. And then I talk about crypto because it's what everyone talks about these days, and real estate and stocks. And a theme that comes back pretty often on my channel, in my videos, and when people ask me questions and everything, is the liquidity thing. And I think being a good investor is all about your mental and what's in your head, and how you deal with FOMO and with dips and with FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and stuff like that. And the fact, I actually published a video that exactly addresses this, that says why investing in startups is the easier investments of all. And my main reason is because there's no liquidity. So there's no mind games. So you actually just don't have a choice. You invest and that's it. You're stuck forever. And you'll probably end up making money if you have a good investment. But if you're in crypto, if you're in stocks, then there's so much chance that you're actually going to sell too early because it just lost 10%. And you would have, there's the very famous Amazon example. If you sold your Amazon shares in 2008 or 2001, I don't remember which one. Yeah, 2001. It went from $80 to $5 during the internet crisis. So if you sold your shares at that time, then you made a terrible decision, because because right now it's at 1,500. So even if you bought it at the highest point before the crisis at $80, you would still have made such a huge profit today. So I really agree on the liquidity thing. But funnily enough, I think the startup investment is going to become more and more liquid with crypto, with tokens, with the secondary market that you mentioned that didn't exist a few years ago. And with actually, I think the crypto ecosystem is actually going to get into the startup. As I mentioned, that it's actually something that I want to do.
I would say there's 2 things, though, that you only brought up half the problem. Half of the problem is yourself. So, i.e., I never drink alcohol. That means I'm never going to have a problem, because it's not like I have to always decide if I'm going to or not. Mm-hmm. But then there's the other problem of everyone else. Yeah. So whereas it doesn't matter if you're willing to hold for forever. If you're willing to hold for forever and everyone else and their mother isn't, it means you're holding onto a bag of shit. So the other people can ruin the market without having any input from the hodlers, so to speak. So I think the always hodl mindset is, I always think the fact that people call it hodl is also hilarious. It just shows how nerdy. It just shows how nerdy the whole ecosystem is. Yeah. But people don't think about that enough. On the Bitcoin going to $1 million, I would say there has to be some kind of use case. The digital gold use case isn't real. because assuming you have stable money, stable digital cryptocurrencies, which you have to if you're going to have transactions, then why would I want to hold my money in one thing when I have something else that's stable, but that's also usable? But you were talking about something else that I thought was interesting at the end, and I totally lost it. I'm ADD.
That's
I've got
fine.
coffee going through me.
Yeah, me too.
I
have a few. Yeah. I'm happy to jump on that. First of all, I think Bitcoin will have a daily usage, a way for everyone to use it every day. Probably you've heard of the Lightning Network that's being tested and going to be released. So that means that everyone can use Bitcoin just to buy coffee, this is what.
But you don't want to, though, because there's only 21 million. That means the price is going to. I'm getting a little sick. The price is going to continuously go up. So if I told you your dollar today will be worth $2 tomorrow, there's no way in hell you're spending your dollars.
That's possible, but it might. I mean, once today, why is the price going up? Is because everyone is buying it. But once the entire population of Earth uses Bitcoin, then it won't go up that much more. But on the other hand, if you have $1 in Bitcoin right now, and you become a millionaire, then you actually want to spend it because you're like, okay, this coffee is basically free because I bought it for $1 and now it's worth 1 million coffees. But the price, since the price in crypto is only based on offer and demand, once the entire planet Earth uses Bitcoin, which is, I think, a possibility, then I don't think that the price would rise anymore. I think it will stabilize at some point at a very high price.
It will, but it'll kind of stabilize it'll stabilize on a hill. It's going to keep increasing because population's going up, economy's growing. So
it's true.
Irregardless, I feel like it has to inflate fast or appreciate faster than most other things.
Yeah, for sure.
So like it was a brilliantly designed system initially, but they didn't. If you don't realize that's why I think it's funny to have the God currency where this is perfect and people are on their knees preaching to Satoshi because it's like no one's perfect, and it's clearly obvious that when evolution's necessary, it's necessary. So having a fixed supply of money and a not fixed supply of demand and an increasing supply of people creates a situation where the money is always more and more and more valuable, which is why
I agree.
People weren't spending Bitcoin initially because no one accepted it, and then they stopped spending it because it was appreciating, so they didn't want to waste their money, and then they stopped spending it or using it because the fees got too high. But aren't we ultimately going to kind of get back to a situation where if one asset's appreciating and one is relatively stable, why in God's name would you use the appreciating asset to have any type of economy?
Yeah.
And then if you think that through, but there is things that are relatively stable, then what's the point of the appreciating asset other than to hold it?
Yeah, it's possible that it will only become a holder of value like gold is right now. Like you don't see anyone buying coffee with gold, but still gold has a price and has value to some people because it's allowing them to store wealth. That could be the only use. Yeah, at some point it's possible.
But the reason why gold's valuable is because I can have one brick of gold or I can have the bajillion pieces of paper that takes up an entire room that a government controls. But if you don't have those control mechanisms of someone else being able to tamper with it, and you're able to fit a brick of gold into the size of a dot, then eventually, why would I hold one Bitcoin when I can hold 100,000 Dash or Ether or whatever, or Litecoin or ABZDX coin? If this is something that's worth $1 and I have 100 million of them, why would I hold one Bitcoin versus 100 million ABZDX coins, which I can spend easily?
Well, I think that they won't have as much value. I mean, Bitcoin is really a low supply crypto, and you can buy 100 million XYZD coin, but first of all, you won't be, I mean, as you said, Bitcoin will only increase. So I think you won't trust as much that other crypto to increase forever than Bitcoin. It's like, why would you buy gold when you can buy just steel? And you're like, yeah, it's kind of the same thing, but actually steel is the same. You know, it's a primary resource and it's It won't go bad over time, and you can store it at your home and stuff like that. But there's actually much more still in the world than gold, and you're going to trust gold because you know there's a limited supply. Actually, there's much more still than gold, and you trust that gold will only appreciate. You wouldn't want to transfer it to steel because you think, okay, what's going to be the price of steel tomorrow? Is it going to change? And probably Bitcoin will end up, it's not sure, but probably in my imagination, in the situation we're discussing, is going to end up being the most stable of the cryptos. Probably.
But if it's stable, it's not appreciating. If it's not appreciating, what the hell's the point of holding something that doesn't appreciate?
Well, it could be like gold. Gold is not appreciating. It's appreciating a few percent per year. And it could be, just as I said, a way to store wealth. But it's much more practical to store wealth on a ledger, on an exchange online, than to actually have a safe with an actual gold brick. That's so 20th century. But if you can store wealth from your smartphone anywhere in the world, that's actually useful, you know.
But you can still do that with ABCDX coin.
Yeah,
you just have a billion.
Absolutely. But do you trust ABCDX coin as much as you trust Bitcoin? That's the question.
I would say if something becomes a world currency that's used and relatively stable, which ultimately, if any of these wins, it's going to have to be relatively stable. Otherwise, it's worthless.
Absolutely.
Then you would trust that significantly more than Bitcoin because
absolutely. I mean, one thing is for sure, there's going to be some winners and some losers. And actually, most of the cryptos that we know today are going to be losers and are going to disappear. My point was not to say that it will 100% sure be Bitcoin, but it's one of the contestants that have the most chances today. That's my point. But it can be something else, and Bitcoin can die for sure. I mean,
totally agree. I just like to knock the maximalists, because the maximalists don't seem to realize that AOL came first and brought people onto the internet, but AOL did not win in the end.
I agree. I really agree. And I have a thesis about this, which is that today there's a lot of people trying to replicate pre-blockchain technologies on the blockchain. So you see everywhere people trading the Amazon on the blockchain, the Netflix on the blockchain, the Uber on the blockchain, the whatnot on the blockchain. And my point is, the winners of the internet revolutions were not people who brought something pre-internet online. They actually created their own new function that was not possible before the internet. I don't know if you know what I mean. Like, it was not like, why is Amazon bigger than Walmart today? Because Walmart didn't try to create the Walmart online, but that's not what people wanted. People wanted Amazon. And I mean, maybe it's a bad example because they're actually not that different. But I mean, if you take Google, if you take Facebook, the big winners of today's internet revolution, there was no search engine before internet because there was no need for it. And there was no social network before internet because it didn't exist, a global social network. So it's actually a new usage allowed possible from the technology that won. And I really think that today everyone is building the Uber of blockchain, but do we actually really need a Uber of blockchain? I mean, the actual Uber works really well and is pretty good for everyone. And I think the winners, most of them are going to be the new usage, something fundamentally new from the blockchain, like Ethereum is. There didn't exist before a blockchain allowing smart contracts because it was not possible with the internet, because you actually need the blockchain. That's why I strongly believe in Ethereum. That's why I invested, and that's why I think it will be one of the winners. So to that point, it is possible that Bitcoin will not be a winner because Bitcoin is actually something that existed before. It's just a store of value. It has the first mover advantage, and it has the advantage of being worldly famous and known, but it's not a fundamentally new technological thing. It's just a replica. So that actually, for me, is a really bad, goes in the bad column of Bitcoin, for Bitcoin. It's really an advantage for Ethereum, on the other hand. Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, what you're talking about is to need to overcome the existing leader, you need to be 5 to 10x better. Not 5 or 10% better. You need to be 5 to 10x better because of the switching costs and everything that goes into it. However, if you create a new category, and you can be half-assed good as long as the product is great and people need it, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely,
you win, and that's exactly what you brought up, and it's interesting, and people need to think more like that.
I agree. And it's actually totally what Peter Thiel said, 0 to 1. He says the winner is not going to be the next Facebook. It's a brand new company that goes from 0 to 1 and creates something fundamentally different. So yeah.
That said, we talked about the security token sales earlier, and I would say that I think, at least in the short term, security tokens are the future. So I'm actually a part of Coral project I've recently joined, and what we're doing is we're building the first revenue sharing token. So we're securitizing access to investing in early stage startups, lending out money, and then sharing out royalties based off of the funding that companies are getting paid. But we're doing it as a securitized sale. And I think we're going to see significantly more security sales versus utility sales, because most utility sales are just fake and they're all security sales for the most part.
Yeah, I agree.
So it'll be interesting.
That's awesome. Congratulations on that project. When can
It's going well.
When can I invest?
I don't think you can, because it's only accredited investors.
Oh,
so
really?
That's the caveat is
here we are again.
Most of what we're excited about in blockchain is the democratization. But the only reason that's kind of working is because everyone's breaking the law.
Yeah.
So it makes it way cheaper and easier, but it also makes it complicated, especially with the SEC.
I agree.
But yeah, if you guys want to check that out, coral.io, CORL.io, Coral, not quite like the underground one or in the water one. But yeah, that's it's interesting. But I want to jump back to you now, Gabriel. Well, let's jump to the lightning round. How's that sound?
Yeah, sure.
First investment that you made, why you said yes, and how's it going?
What's the question? First investment that I made? How's it going?
First investment you made, yeah. How's it going? Why'd you say yes?
Oh, why did I say yes? Actually, it was a contemporary art marketplace, and being from the marketplace world with the wine, I immediately saw the value. And so yeah, as I mentioned, as I told the story, I was the only one to invest. And yeah, actually it's going pretty well, because I made an exit. The company was not sold, but a big ass investor came in and bought all the small investors back. Company is still growing and going really strong. It's called artspur.com.
Nice. 2 top investments to date. They can just be paper in terms of returns.
Shapr, that you've probably heard about, invested in the very first round. So I'm really happy about that. It was completely not known, and now it's really a worldwide sensation. It's French. It's social networking, the Tinder for the professionals, to meet inspiring people around you. That's one. And second one, I have to say BitStamp, because I think has such potential. And I think it's going to go places. Yeah.
To the moon, right? Any anti-portfolio? Who'd you miss? Who'd you say no to?
I actually know there's no anti-portfolio. There's one that I missed that I wanted to invest in. I met the guy, and I literally, I don't know, 10 minutes into the conversation, I said, okay, I want to invest in your company. And the guy said, oh, actually, we just closed an investment last week and it's too late. And that company is called Recast AI. It's a French company. It's the very first exit from Station F. I don't know if you heard about Station F, the biggest incubator in the world. It's actually 500 meters away from where I live.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool. I'm there pretty much every week. And they announced like, oh, this is our first exit. It just got acquired. I don't even know by whom. You can look it up online. But when he told me you can invest, I was like, damn, 1 week. So timing is everything. And that's a big miss. I would have probably made a good return on that.
Damn. At least you're by Station F. What are you excited about today? What industries, areas, et cetera, do you get pumped about?
Well, I really like fintech, actually. If we just take 1 second to forget about blockchain, fintech is my main thing. I think there's so much. And actually, we have some very big banks here in France, and they're just buying startups everywhere. So it's just so easy. You just invest in fintech. 2 years later, get an exit from a French bank, and that's it. That being said, really excited about blockchain as well. And I think, as I mentioned twice already, that blockchain and startup investment are going to merge in some way, and is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, banks are terrified about dying. They have the money and they'll do anything to save themselves.
Absolutely.
What's other than ICOs, what's overhyped?
French startups are getting the Silicon Valley virus. So the valuations are getting even higher. It's getting ridiculous. People are just raising money without even having made a single euro of profit, of even earning money. And yeah, I think the French startups, the Parisian startups with the ecosystem, like there's so many investors now interested, so there's too much money, and the reaction is startups are going crazy.
That's what happens. Money. It's like rats on a sinking ship.
Absolutely.
Or a rising ship. And one last question. What do you go to, look to, listen to, read, etc. on a daily, weekly basis to stay informed?
Oh my God, there's so much. That's such a big part of my life. I read books on Audible, so Audible will be open on my phone every single day. Podcasts, obviously, I listen to so many podcasts, and there is a tremendous, awesome crypto podcast that is called. Let me find it for you. I don't even remember the name, but Flippening. You've probably heard about that.
I haven't checked it out though. Really?
It's so good. I love it, and I learned so much, and it's really, really cool. Flippening, a lot of other podcasts, of course, Tim Ferriss. How can you not listen to him? And I also quite like Russell Brunson. He's an entrepreneur, founder of ClickFunnels, a big company. Went from 0 to $300 million in revenue in 3 years without taking any angel investment, without taking any investment. He's pretty big guy, pretty interesting guy, and he has a podcast. Yeah, and Twitter, of course.
Of course. Richard Brunson, that must be tough. It's so close to Al Branson.
It's Russell Brunson. Yeah, it's
Russell.
Yeah, but still pretty close. Yeah, I think he's
every time I hear that, it triggers it in my head. I know he's someone else, but it kind of triggers it.
Yeah.
Gabriel, I want to thank you for coming on. I know you've got a ton going on. If I were you, I'd head to Station F. That sounds like a ton of fun, and I'm super jealous. Where's the best place for people to connect with you online?
Twitter, LinkedIn is really cool. You can find me with my name. So Gabriele Jarrosson. Jarrosson is JARROSSON. It's really hard to pronounce, as you mentioned, but easy to write as long as you remember the 2 R's and the 2 S's. So yeah, Twitter, LinkedIn is really good. Feel free to reach out. If you speak French, go subscribe to my channel about investment. It's called Leonis, Leonis. You probably don't speak French, so that's fine.
That's okay. And guys, we'll throw links and everything in the show notes because he does have quite a tough name to spell and pronounce. The Syndicate.vc, guys. Hop over there, get in the show notes, say hey to Gabriel. If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes, leave us a review because they're incredibly important. It motivates me and it helps us get great guests like Gabriel on. So the Syndicate.vc/iTunes or /Android if you're an Android guy. And yeah, thanks for coming on today, Gabriel.
Thank you, Matt. Hope to talk to you soon. And thanks for a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks as well. It's been fun. And let me know if I can help out at all.
Sure.
Until next time, cheers, guys.